this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. We have sunshine. It's freezing cold outside, but already in here it's 22. C, of course. That's good. But that is going off. There's a reason for that. The nights are very cold at the moment, and that is just winter. I can't do anything about that. All I can do is stop my minimum temperature dropping below what I want, and that's what my thermostat and my heater's for. But because of those low nighttime temperatures, I don't want the humidity too high in here. Yeah, if we get a mild spell, fine. But it's a cold snap at the moment, and I don't want high humidity with cold temperatures. It's a recipe for disaster, quite honestly. Especially, you know, I mean, I've got some plants that they're borderline getting a bit too cold, and yet others I want to chill down. So, you know, I have to have a balance. It's a single grow room, and although there are some microclimates, they are less obvious in the winter than they are in the summer. So they almost negate themselves, and I get quite a uniform temperature throughout the grow room. But I just want to have a quick chat before I get on with my watering. If I see anything to film, well, which I doubt, because I've been on these orchids like a rash recently, so I know what's going on. So I don't think I'll find any changes. But something that comes up very frequently is, why are some orchids so difficult to grow? They're not. There is no such thing as a difficult orchid. The bit that's difficult is getting the right place and environment to grow it in. It's not the orchid itself. They all want to grow, you know, and where they come from out in the wild, they do pretty well, you know. The problem we get is when we take them out of that environment and try and set them up and get them going in an environment that's just not suited to them. So it's not the orchid that's difficult, it's getting the right environment that's difficult. And again, I've got an average environment. Some are not in their best conditions. You know, it's either too cold, it's too warm, it's too bright, not bright enough. There are so many variables that affect whether an orchid is absolutely bursting with life or struggling. And most of it's not the orchid's fault. It's the environment. It's the way it's being looked after, it's the way it's being cared for, and most importantly, where it's being looked after. Not how, where is so important. Yeah, I mean, you can provide the perfect care for that orchid and it still won't grow. And it's not what you're doing, it's where you're doing it. And that really is the bottom line. It's where you can grow your orchids. And the farther away you get from their perfect world, the harder it will be to grow that orchid. Ways round it. Well, get an average. Yeah, okay, some haven't quite got as much humidity as they would like, they may still do okay. Some may have more humidity than they like, they may do okay. Yeah, it's the same with the light. I mean, here in a UK winter, I don't think there's such a thing as too much light, but the amount of light for the amount of time they get is not right. Yeah, so you might get just the right amount of light, but you're only going to get it for so many hours, you know. I mean, I thought about this is a conservatory, or it was once. Now it's a grow room, and it's not in the best place. You know, yes, it's on the right side of the house, because if it was on the other side of the house, it would only get a couple of hours sun in the morning, and that would be it. Be in the shade all day long. Now, for some plants, that might be perfect, but not for most of what I've got. But this faces southwest, and it's in the shadow of the house. I was out in the garden first thing this morning on a nice bright morning thinking, look at all that lovely light on my shed. Not on my grow room, thinking, you know, that's probably 3 hours good light that I can't have, because until the sun comes across the roof and gets to the grow room, it's in shade. Yeah, so, you know, again, it's a non-perfect environment. If this could be moved 15 feet farther out away from the house, it wouldn't get that shadow and it would get the best light for as long as possible. But I can't do that, so I have to compromise. But it's the where. It's the where you grow your orchids, not how. I mean, most people that are growing orchids, even new people, will have found out. I mean, if you're watching this, then you're watching YouTube videos. There's plenty of, you know, how to grow orchids, plenty of advice, plenty of tips, watering frequencies, water quality, you know, light levels, temperatures. The information's all there. That's the easy bit. The hardest bit is getting the environment suitable for your orchids. And there will always be compromises. But it's not a defeatist attitude. It's a compromise, yeah? And the way to do the best with the compromises is to pick the orchids that are the most tolerant of being away from that perfection, you know, which a lot of us can never achieve. So compromise, you know, your humble phalaenopsis, store-bought types. Yeah, they might start out with lousy roots, as they often do. And a lot of store-bought cattleyas, if you can come across them, have often got no roots at all. And those that have got are all soggy and rotten. So you're starting off, you know, in a backward state. You're trying to recover an orchid, and then you're possibly trying to recover it in a not very good environment for that type of orchid. So it's going to struggle. And if you succeed, boy, do you feel great. So the effort is worth it. To actually take a flipping orchid with no roots at all and actually get it to recover, push out a good root system, push up nice strong new growths and eventually bloom, it's a nice feeling. It really is. And to get something to bloom for the first time is a nice feeling. It's worth the effort. But you need to think about where you put your effort in. Yeah, and what you put that effort into. As I say, your multiple complex hybrids type phalaenopsis plants will grow almost anywhere. And quite honestly, you got a job to kill them. Even if they do start with pretty poor root systems, they tend to recover pretty good. I mean, others that are what I call house tolerant. I mean, if you look at Ed's Orchids videos, he specialises in paphs and frags. Well, the Phragmipediums are probably not the best houseplants. You know, they like an awful lot of water and they like, you know, pretty good humidity around them. They may not be the best houseplants. But some of the more complex hybrid Paphiopedilums will grow in a house. What an exotic orchid to have on one of your windowsills. A Paphiopedilum in bloom. You know, it's quite good. And those complex hybrids are more tolerant. They do like some humidity around them, and you don't want to get them in full sun when the sun's strong. You know, that's going to knock them over. But, you know, where you grow them, it's just so important to think about. And what others have we got? Yeah, Nobile hybrids. They're pretty house tolerant. The Dendrobium phalaenopsis types, they're pretty good in a house. There's some cattleyas that'll do great in a house. And again, you know, when you know, your friends come round and you've got that sat on your windowsill, you know, they will admire it. Oh, they say, how on earth do you manage to grow those exotic plants? Well, you can, you know. But then you can get on to, there's some in here that are not ideal houseplants. Masdevallias restrepias. They need that high humidity. And it's very difficult to achieve that away from an environment like this that can be enclosed, and the humidity can be raised artificially if necessary. Yeah, many of the Oncidium intergenerics are very house tolerant, and you can get some stunning blooms on some of those. I mean, I haven't got many out at the moment, but you know, okay, that's a what is it nowadays? A Miltonidium. But, you know, that would be house tolerant. It's probably going to do better in my grow room than it would on a windowsill, but it would still grow, you know. So it's pick and choose. Vandas can grow in a house. You know, they will tolerate lower humidity around them in the air. as long as you keep those roots hydrated. Give them a good flipping soak. Get that hydration into the plant. And if you can do that, it will be more tolerant of the air humidity around it, because the plant's hydrated from the inside, up from the roots, you know. And watch your temperatures as well. You know, this goes up to 30, 32 degrees on hot days in the summer in here. I don't want it that hot. But to compensate that heat, I whack that humidity up as high as I can get it. You know, and I try and suck out the hot air. I've got facilities to do that sort of thing. So I've had to adapt this environment to the variety of orchids I've got. And this environment is damn near perfect for quite a few of my orchids. It's not so close for some of the others. And in some cases it's a little bit far away from what their perfect environment would be. And so they struggle. It really is as simple as that. So don't think of an orchid as being difficult to grow. You need to think that the difficulty is getting the environment right for it to do well. Yeah? And if you can't get that environment pretty damn close to what is needed, then it's probably better to just steer clear of those types of orchids and save the disappointment. It's all about enjoying the plants, enjoying those blooms, watching them grow, those new growths and new root systems, and being fit as a butcher's dog, you know, bouncing with health and vitality. And it's an absolute joy and an absolute pleasure. There will be some failures. Don't give up. If you've got only failures and no successes, then you need to think about what you're up to. Yeah? Think about your environment, think about your care. Because the chances are, not everything's wrong. A few things might be able to be fixed and suddenly it's all okay again. We do what we can, and as I say, I must get on, so I'll get at that. If there's anything to add on, I will. If not, see you next time. And don't think of orchids as being difficult. It's getting the environment right that can be difficult. And sometimes impossible. Well, don't grow those type of orchids then, is a simple way. Yeah. Stick to the ones that are environmentally friendly and will tolerate not being perfect. Some of them will put up with all sorts of abuse and still do well. Well, if you stick to those, you'll get far less, you just don't get the disappointments. You know, and obviously try and buy orchids with some roots. At least you get off to a running start. You know, it's just worth that little bit of extra time checking, looking round before you actually make your purchase. I know we're all induced by those pretty blooms sticking out the top, but quite honestly, it's what's below the surface. That's where the good plants are. What's in the pot. It's so important, and if you can start off with a reasonable root system and don't stress it out too much until it gets used to where it's going to grow, you're off to a running start instead of trying to climb uphill all the time. So think about your environments. Any little improvement, little bit of extra humidity, little bit of airflow. You know, perhaps, he says, perhaps you could clean your glass. Look at the state of my glass, it's atrocious. And it's not going to get cleaned, and there's a good reason for that. If that glass was squeaky clean and shiny, that sun might be a bit too strong. The dirty glass is a filter. Most of that is residual spray from where I've sprayed plants and it's got on the glass. But no, to clean the glass, all the plants have got to come out the way, and some will get knocked over, spikes could get broken. I'll stick with the dirty glass. The only glass I'm going to clean is this. And there's a good reason for that. There's plants on the other side of that now in the house. And they're getting their percentage of light greatly reduced by having dirty glass. So these windows are going to get a clean today if I get round to it, if not tomorrow. Yeah. But it's on the list. Clean the doors. Get that light through if I can. And another little tip, my Paphiopedilums are all in the house. And then you know, I think most people would agree, you know, who want a bit of advice on Paphiopedilums, go to Ed. Well, in one of his videos, you know, he said, you know, give them the best light you can. This business of them being a low light plant in the UK is cobblers. Give them as much light as you can. So I think I might move some of them onto the kitchen windowsill. Yeah, they'll need a humidity tray. I can do that. But yeah, kitchen windowsill might be better than in this what can only be classed as semi-shade in here. It is quite dull in here for most of the day, but there's not much I can do. Again, it's a balancing act. In there, they stay warm at night. Out here, they freeze. The ones that are out here can tolerate those lower temperatures in the main. They'll put up with it, but those won't. Yeah, so again, that's all environment really, isn't it? It's all down to getting an environment that's conducive to growing the sorts of orchids you've chosen. And it's much easier to have an environment in your mind and then get the right orchids for that environment than to actually get the orchids first and then spend the rest of their lives, which might not be very long, trying to get the environment right for them. Much easier to look at your environment, what you can grow, where and how you can grow them, and then get those orchids that will do okay. Less disappointments equals happy orchid growers. And on that note, have a good growing day. As Rick would say, get out in your garden and do something. Well, I am going out there, it's flipping freezing. I'm staying in here in the warm and watering my orchids. So I must get on with it. I'm sure some people must be mind readers. There's some plants that have just been put in here and assumptions have been made, and this is one of them. And talk about getting it wrong. Because this plant's never bloomed, and I don't see any reason that it isn't blooming size. I mean, it might not be, but I mean, that's an assumption. But I thought, hang on, let's just go and look this one up. And just as I went over to the computer to look this one up, a comment actually popped up and asked me about this plant. Funny coincidence. Anyway, this plant's been getting the wrong care. Cheers, Roger. Do your homework. It just, I don't know why, it just didn't get done. This is a warm grower. I suppose you better actually be told what it is rather than imagine. Bifrenaria harrisoni. It's an odd one. I got a feeling at one point somebody thought this was in the dendrobium class, but you can't really see why, not looking at the plant and the way it grows. But this is a warm grower, where it's going to have to put up with the temperatures it gets in here. But it's a really bright light plant. Well, I've been keeping this away from the bright light, so up you go in the roof, mate. Warmest place I've got, brightest light I've got. And in addition to that, because of where it comes from, it grows quite near the coast in sort of parts of Brazil. You would assume that it wouldn't need a winter rest. Well, apparently it does. Apparently the place where it comes from gets very little rains in the winter, so it does dry off. So yeah, we'll reduce the watering right down then, and we'll see what it does. I'm still not sure what that is. It's highly likely to be another new growth. But given the pattern that this plant's done, started in the middle and it's moved outwards with 2 new growths each year. Yeah, so the 2 near the back, the larger bulbs, that was 1 year's growth. The 2 on the outside edges, that's this year's growth. But now it's done that. Now that's odd. So maybe a new growth. I don't think it's a spike, but then I don't know where the spikes come out. I think they do come out at the base of the plant actually, so you never know. We'll keep our eye on that one. But yeah, I would have not put that in the class of needing a drying off in the winter. But apparently it does, and apparently during that period the bulbs will shrivel back a bit. But that's how it would normally grow. So you know, been treating that one totally wrong. We'll rectify that as from today. Now we may be in for a treat. Unfortunately, it won't be on my plant. This was once Brassivola, glauca. Last I looked, it was Rhyncholalia glauca. The glauca bit hasn't changed, but this is one of those that is notoriously difficult to bloom, and I've never got mine to bloom, although I nearly lost the whole plant. This is now a recovering plant. The whole thing just went right down, and I had to break and try and rescue the end bits, the bits that looked okay. And it's recovering okay, but it's now a small plant, whereas it was a huge plant. But nonetheless, the treat you may be in for is it looks highly likely that Danny has got hers to bloom. The difference between how she looks after hers and I look after mine is the difference between the UK and Cyprus. Simple as that. She's got the light and the length of the days to give this what it needs, whereas I haven't. So I may always have a non-blooming version of this. We'll wait and see, but yeah, I mean, I've had this plant quite a while and it's never bloomed, but Danny's looks like it's got buds, so keep your eye out. That will be a treat. They are a rare sight. Seriously, you search the whole of YouTube and try and find somebody who's got a Rhyncholalia glauca in bloom. Have fun. Well, there's me saying there's nothing much changed. Well, this Dendrobium moniliform variegata has signs of life. We have signs of life. We have, well, you won't be able to see that one. Yes, you will. We have signs of life. Now, those could still be kikis. Yeah, I mean, this plant has produced kikis in the past. I think there's 2 of them out on their holidays at the moment, but nonetheless there's something going on, so it's something to watch. As I say, time will tell, as always. Buds or spikes, a classic game. But you know, if you don't want to play the game, well, just wait a couple of weeks. You know, the plant will soon tell you whether it's a spike or buds or a kiki. You know, just give it some time. Be patient, as they say. But something's going on, and while I'm there, this is my Victoria Reginae, and this has got signs of life. Process of elimination. There's nubbins all up this cane. The giveaway may well be that it's got one there. Now, for a Dendrobium to produce a kiki at that point would be highly unusual. Yeah, now again, this one has produced kikis. Oh, there's another one on that cane there. But again, signs of change. There's something going on that main cane. Now, these normally produce their blooms on the bare canes, the older canes, but I have seen them with blooms on newer canes that have still got their leaves. So again, we will wait and see. But if this one blooms, it will be the first time ever. But then I haven't had it a huge amount of time, and it was kikis when I got it, so I was never expecting the earth from it. But if those turn out to be kikis, they'll come off, they won't stay on the plant. If they're blooms, I shall do a little dance. I'm not filming it, don't ask. Now, this is Heppa Dendron nocturnum. Well, it was last time I looked. Do you know, I get hesitant naming plants nowadays, because you only got to go out for a coffee and by the time you come back they've changed it again. But with me, my rules are, unless a plant's going to a show or a display or something or other, when it becomes more important, whatever it's called when I get it, that's what stays. Yeah, I like to keep the name that I got when I got the plant. That's as I've always known it. And I am reluctant to change the tags, quite honestly. Well, at the moment I haven't got many tags left, so but this started to produce that spike probably over a year ago, and it stopped growing, and I thought, well, that's it, that's that cane, because it only blooms once out of the top, that's your lot. But it's now growing, and I can say with confidence now that is a bloom spike. Whether it will fully develop and I'll get a bloom or not, we'll have to wait and see. Bought as a young plant, you know, you have to be patient with young plants. But, you know, this is a mature cane. This is the latest cane, pushing on nicely. Hopefully that one will bloom, but that definitely looks like it's a spike developing and now looks green, and okay, whereas before it didn't. It started to grow and then it sort of went brown and stopped, and now it's just shot out again. It's having another go from the same place. So looks like we may, again, that'll be a first time bloomer, so we may get some blooms on that. I don't know how long it's going to take. I haven't had the plant in bloom before, but you know, my notes will say when that spike started to move, and then my notes will say when a bloom first opened. So then I've got a record of how long it takes from the first sign of buds to how long it takes to when the blooms open. Yeah? I mean, it's not important really, just be patient and you'll find out. But I do like to keep those sort of records so that I've got a clue. I had an Orangus once, I've lost it now, Alicei. That bloom spike took 13 months from the start to the point the blooms opened, and then the blooms lasted 3 weeks. I haven't got that plant anymore. It actually died. I didn't sell it or anything. It actually just was doing well, growing well, new leaves, new roots, and it just suddenly keeled over for, as yet, unknown. I'm never going to find out what went wrong with that plant, you know. But the fact that it had grown for quite a while, happily, to suddenly go down, I don't think it was anything I necessarily did. But anyway, another spike, and that is moving. I mean, that's probably grown half an inch since I last looked at that plant, so it's moving now. So something definitely happening. Now this I wasn't expecting. This is not the first time I've seen the buds, but this is Maxilaria arachniflora. Bloomed incredibly well at the beginning of the year, and then the plant went downhill fast. I had to split it. It was totally pot bound, no room for the roots to grow, so it got split. I've still got 2 plants. This is the better one of the 2. It is producing new growths and is starting to get a root system going, but I've got 2 nice buds on here, and this one is not long for opening now, probably certainly within the next week, and then there's another bud coming along behind. I wasn't expecting this to bloom this year, so that will be nice to see those blooms again. They are quite stunning. Not long lived, but certainly in the spring it produced enough of them not to worry about that. Anyway, a couple of nice buds pushing on that one, and the plant is recovering, albeit slowly, but there are quite a few new growths pushing off here and there. One here, a couple around the other side, so starting to recover, and then at some point I can get these manky leaves off, make the plant look a bit better. But I need a lot more new growths before I start taking leaves off, and it'll only be as a last resort. So yeah, a couple of buds coming on that one, that'll be good. Oh, I'm going to blind you all with bright light now. I'm nearly going to be poetic, you know. As the sun sets on my grow room, so the sun sets on this video. A load of cobblers. Anyway, this is the end of the video, end of today's video, and hope you've enjoyed it. It's chat about the environments and you know, do the best you can and all that sort of stuff, and a few changes on some of the plants. Do you want to see autumn? Now, some people that would frighten the life out of them, but I know this plant. Yeah, basically those are last year's canes. They bloomed this spring, and it's now autumn. It's their time. So, you know, those older canes are just dumping their leaves. It just looks a bit dramatic when they do it all at once like that. But easy test. If there was a problem with this plant, you'd be looking at these canes. These are this year's canes, and they're strapping, green, nice canes. Those are last year's canes. It's their time. Yeah. Some noblies hold their leaves a bit longer than others. You know, some can keep them for 2 full years, but this one in particular tends to put up new growths early in the spring. They grow up to their size during that season. They hold their leaves through most of the next season, and as the season comes to a close and the colder temperatures come, they dump their leaves. As I say, this has got to such a big plant. I cut off quite a few of the older canes, including the leafless ones at that particular point, but you know, with that number of older canes all dumping their leaves at once, it does look a bit dramatic. You know, it's not a problem. Natural sort of process. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by, and hope you've enjoyed me waffling around and looking at a few possible buds to come and all things like that. Bye for now.